Adam Popp, welcome to Run Chats with Ron Runs NYC. How you doing this evening, my brother?
Wonderful. How are you, Ron?
It's great to see you again after seeing you over at the Hoka event, man. That was really something. It was such an inspiring evening with you, put on by Achilles and Hoka and Nordic Track, iFit, and I might have missed a few of your sponsors, but you were going for all sorts of Guinness records that night. And that was my first chance to get to meet you in person, although we did kind of cross paths at the JFK 50 one of those years. I know you ran it, I think, like 6 years in a row. And it might have been my very first time. And yeah, that was pretty cool to be there and spend a little time with you at the event.
Yeah, cool. It wasn't under my best circumstances at the event to meet me, but I was having a little, as you can imagine, some nausea and just fatigue after running that long. But it was a pleasure meeting you there as well. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah. Well, for guests that are as accomplished as you, it's something I do to just make it a little bit easier for guests that might be thinking about whether they're going to tune in for a longer episode or not, is I'll just like read a little bit of a bio on you because damn, dude, it's so impressive. And it's just mind blowing to me, just some of the things that you've accomplished to this point. So I'm just going to read a little bit to the Run Chats audience. So you'll all have a little bit more background on Adam if you didn't catch our Instagram live, which was like a week or two ago. So Adam's a 12-year combat veteran of the Air Force with deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, and as an explosive ordnance disposal team leader in 2007 while working to disarm a roadside bomb IED in Afghanistan. Adam was injured by a secondary IED, resulting in the amputation of his right leg above the knee. Adam is a Purple Heart recipient. That's a hard stop. Tillman Scholar, another hard stop. And he's now an 8-time Guinness World Record holder, became the first above knee amputee to complete a 100-mile ultramarathon. He has 5 100-mile finishes and set an amputee record time of 16 hours, 13 minutes, 43 seconds for a 100-miler in 2024. He also owns the fastest marathon time for an above knee amputee of 2:57. And I think you did that in London, which was right after Boston, if I'm not mistaken, which is even more crazy because they were only 6 days apart. And he's also completed a full Ironman in 11 hours, 3 minutes, and 6 seconds. So I almost had to stop breathing there for a second, just, recanting some of those things. Amazing stuff. Truly, truly amazing stuff. And I'm lucky that our other Adam friend connected us because Adam's been on my podcast and he's very involved with the JFK 50, as am I, and as are you. We all share a love of that race and our good friend, Mike Spindler, Pink. So kind of in a way, we were all, I guess, meant to come together. And, Adam played a big part of, tracking everything you were doing at that event that night. And man, it's amazing stuff, man. And it's an honor to have you on and thank you for your service.
Yeah, it's my honor to serve, and thanks for having me here today. Your interview with Mike Spindler is like one of my favorite podcasts of all time. Just hearing that guy tell stories is incredible, and the way you're able to converse with him and pull those stories out of him, it's just, I mean, he can paint a picture and really pull you along, and it's just a really neat way to experience that through your podcast. So yeah, now we're full circle from JFK, Mike, and Adam now, and glad to
Yeah.
finally be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he is a one of a kind storyteller and a true historian of running and just a lover of our sport and has done so much
Hmm.
in the community. So I think maybe the best place to start is I like to go back to the beginning. So how about we
Hmm.
start at your accident and then post
Hmm.
accident and just kind of take us through the enormous, not only physical and emotional highs and lows of what you were going through and like what your recovery journey looked like from the time, I guess it happened to, I think you spent an entire year at Walter Reed. So maybe we start there.
That's right. And you hit the nail on the head with highs and lows. So there have been many highs and lows throughout that journey over the past 17 years. Prior to losing my leg in 2007, I thought I was physically fit and able and capable and independent. And then, as you mentioned earlier, on December 7th, 2007, I was in Afghanistan in the military doing the job of explosive ordnance disposal, working on a roadside bomb when a secondary device went off, and I was right on top of it. And with an instant, my life went from that able, capable, what I thought was, the fittest of my life to clinging on to life and waiting for others to come to my aid, save my life, put me on a helicopter, fly me to a hospital within Afghanistan where, I was awake through that whole time of the injury, explosion, helicopter ride. And when they put me on the operating table in Afghanistan, they put me under, and then I woke up in Germany, 8 or 10 hours later, in a hospital bed, missing my right leg. My arm was severely damaged, and just thinking like, damn, what's next? What's my life going to look like now? And That's really where the recovery started for me. And as you mentioned, a lot of it was physical, but much more of it was mental in the long term. So from that bed in Afghanistan, or I'm sorry, in Landstuhl, Germany, I returned to Walter Reed, as you mentioned. So December 11th, I landed in Walter Reed and then started my journey of physical therapy, occupational therapy, and probably about a month of surgeries to get me to a stabilized point where I could begin to physically heal. 4 months later, I wore a prosthetic for the first time, and then it started with that crawl, walk, run phase. But the running came 7 years later. I was in that crawl and walk phase for about 7 years, and a year of that being Walter Reed, and then transitioned out of the military and was living in the Washington, D.C. area, just outside of where I recovered, and went back to work and kind of had a pretty simple life there for 7 years of working, playing hard, working hard, and then running didn't end until 2015.
Awesome. What are some key learnings and takeaways? I'm sure you were grouped together with many other fellow amputees who suffered maybe similar types of accidents and have been through hell and are
Yeah.
trying to piece their bodies back together physically, but then also the emotional damage, families maybe torn apart, losing members in your unit, all the things that can happen to somebody
Mhm.
who's, serving the country. What are some key learnings and takeaways from that entire year? I mean, a whole year, it's hard for me to wrap my head around, thinking about being, in their care for a whole year. So it must have
Mhm.
been a hell of a journey.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And I think the biggest takeaway for me is we don't do it alone. We don't recover alone. We don't get through life alone. We don't get through those ups and downs, as you mentioned earlier, alone. And I found that very serendipitously through my journey at Walter Reed. When you're surrounded by it, you don't really recognize on how, I guess, fortunate you are, which is kind of a weird way to put it, but fortunate you are to have those peers around you, the organizations coming into the hospital to support your journey, to support your recovery. But mainly those people who have been through something similar to I had, who were months or years down the line, coming back to really play a pivotal role in my recovery, and just showing me authentically through action, like how they recovered. So, for example, within 3 or 4 months of being at Walter Reed, I was invited to go on a ski trip. And, I'm not even wearing a prosthetic yet, let alone skiing, let alone, really being able to travel in an airport or any of those other things. But, I was with a group of 15 other men and women who had lost limbs, and we went out to Vail, Colorado, and within 2 days, I'm skiing because of these people around me, because of the organizations, because of my peers and the mentors around me, like showing me the way and showing me what was possible. And that really stuck early within my experience of post-injury, and it's something I've carried, through my journey 17 years later on, realizing like I didn't get here alone. Other people similar to me like don't get there on themselves by themselves in a lot of cases, and we really need that support around us. The people who are authentically leading the way and doing the actions, to really like to show us and be there and support us. So that's one of my maybe a long-winded way of saying like what my key takeaway is the important people within my life, but it's really meant a lot to me and kind of guided not only my journey, but the way I try to serve others and be an example for others.
Wonderful. It leads me right into my next question beautifully. So, seeing those people teaching you how to get upright and ski and do these other things that probably just seemed so far out there at that very point, that kind of
Right.
got you feeling like, hey, man, I'm alive again. I can do things. I can be
Mm.
active again. It had to just kind of light a spark, if you will. But I'm just curious, with all the things that you're doing for the military, the community, and other things, have you had a chance to go back and like speak to people like that were injured like you at Walter Reed, or maybe in other, military settings where you can talk to other people and kind of just share your own journey from how dark it was when you got started yourself to, where you are now, to share that kind of a story.
I definitely do it whenever the opportunity presents itself. So when I was at the hospital, there's a program there through the Amputee Coalition of America where they invite individuals to be what they call peer mentors, and they give them some training. and kind of teach them how to be a good visitor. Because when I was laying in the hospital bed, I had plenty of great visitors, and I had some people who were not so great visitors. And anyway, they teach you very basic and simple skills how to like talk to people and converse with them and put yourself in their situation and meet them where they're at and all these things. But so in 2008, I went through that training, and that's kind of been the basis of my peer mentoring, if you will. And I did a little bit at Walter Reed, and then after I left the military, I pursued a degree in what they call rehabilitation counseling and clinical counseling, so I could do that at a much higher level, meaning, kind of what I alluded to earlier of that mentoring and mentorship and guidance support that I received, doing that from like a counseling standpoint. So I was able to do that through there. But then also when I moved out to Denver, there's been a few amputees who had come through the hospital and the Denver hospital. And I'm on the Amputee Coalition of America's mailer list. So if somebody comes through the hospital and they know I'm in the area, they can kind of connect me with them, and I can go meet them at the hospital if that's what they want, because everybody wants something a little bit different. So to answer your question, I've done that in various roles throughout the past 17 years. I think it's, again, one of the most beneficial things I received while laying in the hospital bed and post-injury. But again, everybody's also different on what works for them. And I just try to be there and support them in whatever manner I can be, whether it's talking and answering questions, or maybe it's equipment support, or just being completely hands-off and having them reach out to me and answer questions when I can.
That's fantastic. It leads me right into my next one. I'm good at this. I love to get, because runners, we have that mentality of, we just keep going, no matter what kind of hardships. And we just persevere. We're problem solvers by nature. And when we get knocked down, we get back up. In your case, you have this unbelievable injury and you turn it around into something remarkable. So mentorship to me is something that really always resonated. Like, to me, it starts all the way in the grade school level. So if you could, for me, a couple of people who maybe had an impact for you, either on the educational side when you were in school as a kid, or in college, or in the military specifically before the injury, like maybe some key mentors or teachers maybe who had an impact on you, and why.
Yeah, I think my soccer coach growing up in high school, I had a great team and teammates around me. And then my coach in soccer was someone who really, I was like kind of that scrapper and underdog, and he kind of saw that in me. And even though I might not have been the best player, it's like, wow, this guy, like, there's something there, and just kind of developed maybe my strengths. And I think that's kind of been a common theme throughout my life, is like people, inviting people into my life that can maybe point out things that I don't necessarily see, and then help me grow in those areas, whether they're strengths or maybe weaknesses, if you will. But I think he did that very well. And, from the time I was a sophomore to the senior, I just grew I just grew tremendously, not only athletically, but personally, and so many areas of my life. So it's probably one of the keys from, my high school time. And really, if I think back prior to that, my grandparents were just incredible. You bring up the words perseverance and resilience, and there's kind of a story that I learned early in my family history when I was helping my dad in my grandfather's garage, and I was probably like 6 years old. And there's my grandpa has this like old beat up garage that we would do woodworking in, and hanging on the wall were these like rusted pieces of metal. Like, I didn't know what they were. So I'm asking my dad, like, oh, what's the story with these things? I'm like a 5-6-year-old kid. And he was telling me the story that when he was a kid, my grandfather lost his job, was laid off. And my grandfather bought these traps to like trap animals and sell their fur, so that my dad and his brothers and sisters could have a Christmas. And that really stuck with me throughout time. And then, just this ability to overcome like really hard challenges. And then my grandfather was like doing better off later in life, like when I knew him, but just to know this kind of like up and down, it wasn't a straight path. And it's similar to what you mentioned about the ups and down challenges that many of us face. And that really stuck with me early on in life. And then I saw my dad build the house literally from his own hands that we grew up in, and just these points in my life where it's people just doing the best they can with what's given to them. And that's kind of like really impacted my journey later on in life when, I feel like, oh, I lost my leg and I can feel down on myself. Or, yes, and like what can I do with this situation? It's what I have now and what can I do with it? And when I reflect back to those early points in my childhood, my family like gave me that gift early on how to like deal with difficult situations.
Yeah, it shapes you, especially when you're a kid. That stuff really sticks with you. And
Mm-hmm.
that hard work ethic and the sacrifices that our family members made, grandparents, whatever, it really sticks with you and it shapes you.
Mm-hmm.
And it can show up much later in life, particularly after you've gone through some things like you have. And when you
Mm-hmm.
need it in the most, we kind of go back to those places and can really think about it because if he didn't do that, you guys wouldn't have had a Christmas. Maybe you wouldn't have had a
Right.
home. Who know, who
Right.
knows,
Right.
right? You just don't know how things would have been. So
Mm-hmm.
you've been through so much, and I've heard you on some other shows. So I
Mm-hmm.
know as a kid and as an athlete, soccer, other sports like ball sports, but you really weren't into running. Running was
That's
punishment, like
right.
most kids. I think you were into like high jump, long jump, and got roped into that or whatever, if I remember correctly. But
That's
running
right.
was running was definitely not your thing. So
No.
give the Run Chats audience like how did you go from your journey getting fitted for the prosthetic, um, getting ambulatory again, moving, and then all of a sudden, like what started that spark to actually think like, hey, I actually want to run, or how did that whole process start? Because it's really pretty amazing.
Yeah, it started really around a relay race that I did in Washington State, and it's a multi-sport relay race that involved skiing and biking and canoeing and running. And I took a group of wounded soldiers up there, wounded military members up there to Washington State to participate in this event. And I usually did the canoeing section because it doesn't involve running, because I wasn't running at that time. I was very not fit at all, horrible cardio, and I just did this little to get by. So I did the canoeing portion, and then the third year of doing this event, I decided I would try to run. Went to Walter Reed to get a running prosthesis, and that was a whole like journey of itself of getting fitted and trying this device out, and slowly starting the process of learning how to have a running gait and retrain my brain how to use a prosthetic for running. And that was like a several month process. But, I think, yes, that event was one thing, but really what propelled me was learning how to run and then meeting this community, this running community through a run club in Arlington, Virginia. That was part of the Team RWB group there. So I'm not for sure if you're familiar with them, but, this group really tries to connect military and civilians. But more importantly, one thing I didn't realize, but I lost when I left the military was this really deep community of friends and people who were so influential in my life and had, we deployed together and did all these hard things together. And it's a community that meant so much to me. And within, the span of a year through my time at Walter Reed and subsequent retirement from the military was taken away from me. And it's something I struggled to find for years after leaving the military. And when I finally found this like running community, you said it best, man. You know what this community is all about. It's perseverance. It's tight bonds. It's pushing through difficult times. It's kind of being in the trenches together. And it was such a positive influence and so reminiscent of what I experienced in the military with the community and friends that I had in the military. And once I found that, I was like, this is where I need to be. This is where I want to be. This is what's been missing in my life for so long. And I went to that run club probably every week for, I don't know, 5 years and almost never missed a run club if I was in town. And, that community's been around me for the past 10 years and been rallying around me. You coming to the event and people putting on the event and people cheer me on at JFK, and it's not just me; it's like the people and runners around us, and they're just as excited for them as they are me, and it's just a really cool and unique experience to be a part of this community. And like I said, once I found it, I knew this is what I've been missing for so long.
Yeah, it's family, man.
Mm.
It's we have our own families, but that there's that deep connection. When we're lucky enough to find a career that we really love and maybe work for an employer for a long time or found a business or start a business, and you treat it as if it is your family. The employees are your family, but the military has that element for sure. And to serve, to be part of serving others in all the different branches, Team RWB, I certainly know of the great things that they do. I definitely think I need to get somebody on from their organization on the show at some point. Probably long overdue. And I was supposed to talk to the Tillman people multiple times because, you're a Tillman scholar. My friend Amy is a Tillman scholar, and you and Amy used to run miles in DC together. So
That's right.
they do amazing work. All of these groups are just doing amazing work. And for us in the running community, when we're out there in the New York City Marathon in Boston and we see a Team Achilles person go by in that bright yellow, I don't care what kind of day I'm having. My day immediately gets better. And if
Yeah.
you're not taking a moment to just slide over to the left or right and just say, go Achilles, man, you're just missing out in life, because when you see
Yeah.
their faces light up and their guides, that are out there with them, because it does take that. It is a community. You can't do this stuff by yourself. And you couldn't be where you are today. You couldn't be out trying to break more Guinness records and raise awareness and create positivity and inspiration if you didn't have Achilles and Hoka and some of the other sponsors that you've connected with. And they're smart to connect with you, man, because you're doing great stuff.
Yeah, undoubtedly, and especially on the Achilles note, I ran New York City Marathon in 2016, I want to say, and it's their home base there. And when you put that yellow jersey on and you show up on their home course, it feels like every one of those like tens of thousands of people along the course are your number one supporter, and it's insane. And because of that, I ran way too fast and blew up about mile 17, but I just felt so great, like everybody loves me, and it just pumps you up to almost to a detriment at times. But it's incredible. It's an incredible feeling, and yeah, I started with Achilles in 2008 at the Chicago Marathon when I was using a hand cycle and not fit. And then they've just been, a great supporter of mine over the past, 16 years since that Chicago Marathon. And from hand cycling at a very like beginner level to being able to run with a blade and then now do it, as an elite at Boston. It's been an incredible journey, and you're 100% right. I would not be here without them. So, and many others. So.
I mean, it said so well. And, just walking into your event late, my God, you had started at 10 in the morning. And I think I got there at 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. And, I was just in my head going like, this guy started running at 10 o'clock this morning. He's still going. And then I'm like, but he's going to try to go all the way through the night, and your brother was there doing just an amazing job on the filming and, the production end of stuff. And, just all the Achilles people showing up on the treadmill next to you or hand cycling in the room, all there cheering you on, different other entities and groups that support you and know you, family members, friends, popping in the room. It's just amazing, what kind of energy, doing something really hard and putting yourself out there can generate. And, I was pissed that I didn't get there sooner. But then, I saw what you go through, and people don't realize, if you're trying to run 24 hours or you're trying to run 200-mile ultra race, like people don't want to talk about that stuff, man, but you get sick, man. It's awful. And you can't you're either putting too much in or you're not getting enough in, but that balance is the hardest thing in the world, Adam. And you're running on a treadmill, and no matter how much you're trying to keep your body cool, it's hot, man. It got hot in there. I felt it, but you're on there the whole day, so I'm sure your body temp's getting really warm, and it's so much to manage. But once you start getting sick and can't keep things down, that is so tough, man. And you were grinding, brother. You were grinding, man. It was impressive to watch.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. I was grinding. That was a very unique experience for me, in so many senses of the word. But yeah, I was grinding and totally out of my element. And I think over time I've been trying to find this balance of like, how much to put out in the public eye or how much just to stay reserved and kind of in my own shell and protective and just go do my own thing and being able to put up good results within my own little bubble. But then there's a trade-off, right, of sharing this with others and hopefully being, maybe that spark that you mentioned. And I've had so many people who have influenced me from that sense that, I've tried to step out of my comfort zone a little bit and tried to do some big things in the public eye, and it's a lot harder when you're trying to like put yourself out there and um, be that example.
Yeah. And maybe it's easier for me to say for you, because believe me, I met a lot of people that have your will and drive and are amazing. They tend to be the humblest of all. They're not the ones who ever want to be like, look what I did. Hey, I just ran
Right.
200. They're not that kind of person. They love it when someone else might tell somebody, but they don't even want, they'd rather they just call somebody on the phone and tell them, not like put it out into the universe. Because it's
Right.
really about just doing it and actually proving that you can do it, or trying your damnedest to actually
That's
do
right.
something that's so crazy hard. But man, it's just unbelievable. And we always focus so much on the success, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
actually make that crazy wild thing. And we
Mm-hmm.
never spend enough time focusing on when we don't make the crazy wild thing. There are still so many amazing positive things that come from it. I mean, I know how many people you affected that day and that evening, and then the next night, until you finally could not go any further because of your stomach distress. You still set how many Guinness records that day or day and
Yeah,
evening?
and
How
they're
many? How
yeah,
many
they
were?
were up, yeah, they're like 12 hours. So it was like five or six within there. But um yeah, and some of these, some of my previous like biggest failures, if you will, or times when I didn't necessarily meet expectations have been my biggest springboards going forward. So, I can reflect back to prior to my first 100-mile race, I was trying so hard to make the triathlon national championship, and I missed it literally by 2 seconds. And I reached out and was like, is there any leeway here? And they're like, absolutely not, no leeway. And, I felt like the biggest failure. And from that, I was like, all right, I'm going to try something much, much different, much harder, and learned about the 100-mile distance and, used that failure as a springboard to finish that first race. And, was able to do that within maybe 6 months after that, like failure, if you will. So, in situations like New York, yeah, it was difficult. I was able to accomplish most of what I set out to do. There was a little bit of, failure, quote unquote. And I'm sure I'll use it to springboard into the next big challenge.
It fuels growth. It always does.
Totally.
It always
Totally. I love
will.
that.
And I loved your rise above, achieve beyond. I love that.
Mm.
Um, the theme of this podcast, the mantra, and it's all about my mom, who at 92 is still with me and has lived with
Mm.
lymphoma for 30 plus years and multiple
Mm.
types of cancer. And toughest little Irish lady you'll ever meet in your life. I mean, there's just no way you can stop her. I mean, she worked until she was 85 full time and was still driving a car back and forth to work.
Yeah,
They don't make
incredible.
them like they don't make them like
Mm.
her anymore, Adam. And so she would always say, put one foot in front of the other, get down the road. It beats the other side of like not having somewhere to go, not having something to do, and being not able to move, not able to get up and go. So stay in the fight. That's where it came from, like from my
Yeah.
mom and how tough she is and how resilient she is and how strong she is. So you're that kind of person, like you turn it into something else. First off, it was not a failure. I mean, and
Right.
that word is just hilarious anyway, because people hear it and right away they think, oh, you failed. No, you went for something incredibly awesome and you did a huge chunk of it and you didn't quite get exactly what you were going for out of it, but damn, it was impressive, man. It was seriously impressive. And so is, the whole tagline, Rise Up, Achieve Beyond. Like, where did that come from? Like, what inspired that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of what you just talked about, right? That growth, that post-traumatic growth. Oftentimes, especially in my community, the veteran community, we hear post-traumatic stress disorder, and kind of these, disorder mentalities when, similar to what I mentioned with my grandfather and you mentioned with your mom, that we see these people around us who have experienced and faced so much adversity. They're able to rise above that adversity and achieve beyond what anybody around them could imagine, right? So that's kind of where it stemmed from, was this mentality of post-traumatic growth, growing after a traumatic event, rising above all these things that could hold us down, the trauma, the physical disability, the mental challenges, um, and just using these experiences to rise above all that. And then once we do that, and once we can grow through that, we can just achieve beyond our greatest expectations and what we ever thought was possible.
Love it. So your drive, energy, your spirit, your competitive fire, it's all like visible. You can just see it. Where do you think it comes from?
Yeah, it's a combination, and I think I mentioned a lot of that earlier with the family portion, maybe I can weave a few of the things that I mentioned earlier into where it comes from, and it comes from what I was given as a child, right? That those experiences with my grandfather, my grandparents, my parents, and overcoming challenges, and there were ups, there were downs, and they got through it and got through it better. But then also, like I said, partnering with people within my community who have supported me over the past 17 years, and have, served beyond, like gone to great lengths to serve me and my community, both the veteran community, the athletes with disability community, and really just supported me in all aspects of my life when I needed community or, um, you know, uh, I don't know, a wide variety of things, but the educational support. And so really it's a combination of family, friends, those who I surround myself with, and then like those outside organizations such as Achilles, Team RWP, Pat Tillman Foundation, like so many of these people. Like I said, we don't get through it alone, and that's kind of where it comes from.
Has it changed post-accident? I mean, do you feel, I mean, obviously, physically, your body's changed. So many other things have changed. You have the scars, the emotional, you have your survival day, all of those things,
Mhm.
from how many
Mhm.
years ago, how this has affected you. But has your drive and competitiveness and all that stuff, has it changed since then?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it earlier. I thought, December 6th, the day before I got hurt, I thought that was the most physically fit and independent and able I was, right? And after my injury, I thought I could never get back to that level. And I think, I realized soon after I started applying myself and like pursuing things, um, that I far surpassed that prior self, right? So, I lost my leg in 2007. For that 7 years, I thought I'll never be here again. And within maybe like 8 months of actually applying myself, I was like, oh, there was like no looking back after that. Like I've done surpassed that old guy like months ago, and now we're like 10 years down the line, and I've just done so many things within that the past 10 years. You mentioned some of it, but it's not just about running. I have a wife, I have a 2-year-old son, a girl on the way. I got my undergrad after after I made that change, and then 2 master's degrees since then. And just so many friends and valuable relationships and meaningful relationships. It's not like sole focused on this running aspect, but just being better in all aspects of my life. And you're right, it has changed, and I've far surpassed that prior two-legged guy.
Yeah, version 2.0 is Terminator mode advanced. It's like the cyborgs with Schwarzenegger and all the different versions, man. Skynet. You're a far advanced version, my brother. You're doing much better. So how has God bless with the second one on the way, but how has being a dad changed you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of reflects back to what we mentioned earlier. It's you're setting this example whether you realize it or not, and it's like, what example do I want to be like? What's the life I want to be leading? What's the example I want to be setting for this small little person who absorbs so much, whether we realize it or mean to or not? So it's really setting that example and being thoughtful and cognizant and aware of that. And it's helping him through challenges without giving him the answer, right? It's like helping him develop so he can do these things on his own, and not, um, you know, uh, like giving him the path forward. So it's a difficult balance when, someone you love is struggling, but I think it's like trying to figure out that happy medium between, how do I develop them into a self-sustaining person who wants to pursue, growing into the best version of themselves, and giving them all the answers. So,
Yeah, love it. So, for races, because you do so many different types, right? You've done Ironmans, which are 11 hours for that one particular race. You've done 100 milers. You tried to go 24 hours, made it incredibly long on the treadmill recently. They're very different. The amount of time you're on
mhm.
your feet are different. the courses
Mhm.
you're running on are different. JFK, you're on the AT, and Boston, you're on the roads with me and
Mhm.
everyone else. Do you use different mantras when you're in these races of like different lengths? And if they are, like, what's the difference in them, and how do you like have that going through your mind as you're trying to take on these really hard tasks?
Yeah, you mentioned that word mantra before, and I love that. There are a few mantras that are common threads throughout what I do. I can share one because it's kind of relevant to what you mentioned earlier, but we talked about the missing the triathlon national championships by 2 seconds. So kind of ever since then, I've thought like every second counts, and that's very authentic to me. And I think that's the like key for mantras, right? Like this is some of my sports psychology background coming in now, but the keys about mantra is not me or not you giving me one or not me giving you one, but it's really like developing one that's authentic to us and means a lot to us. And I can't think of anything more relevant than every second counts and that's just been a driver of mine after, coming so close to what I thought was like a big goal. But yeah, I think overall, like mantras can be helpful in those different scenarios. And it's just really working on that mental side of, what can be helpful in those situations. Cause you're right. Like 100-mile, 24-hour race is so difficult to get through. And physically is one thing, but when our mind starts to fight us and we start to get so caught up in spiraling unproductive thoughts, then the battle's lost at that point. So working through those difficult mental situations, you know, is a lifelong journey, and like how to do that well. And it falls not only within the athletic realm, but also like personal life as well. So it's something I've been working on hard. And if you have any tips, I'd love to hear yours as well.
Yeah. I think, based on the length of the races, obviously, the longer they go, you better have more in your tool bag, to pull
That's
out.
right.
And, the thing that blows me away is, seeing you blow by me on the AT, and I'm just like, here I am. I'd already eaten, God knows how many rocks, my first time through JFK, and elbows are bloodied, knees are bloodied, shins are bloodied. And I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, how did I get talked into doing this race? Like, what am I doing? And here you are blowing by me, and I'm just like, what the heck? He's like going down the stairs like 50 miles an hour, like a skiing the Black Diamond. And I'm just like shaking my head. And I'm just like, and then when I would go through an aid station, they were trying to clean me up, like, nope, nope, don't touch any of those. Leave those alone, man. We want to
No
have,
war wounds.
yeah, we want those wounds. But I just got to tell you, man, I don't know how in God's name, like, how long did it take you to get comfortable, like running on like the AT? I mean, it's just so unpredictable. I mean, you've got roots underneath those leaves, you've got all kinds of stuff, and it's hard enough for us to balance when we have our two natural legs. And here you are out there, doing it. It's just mind-blowingly impressive.
Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot over, it's taken me a lot of time to get comfortable, and I'm definitely not comfortable on those more technical sections. And I always gauge my performances on the AT and JFK specifically on like how many times I fall during that AT section because, it's two or three is like typically a good day, and there's been many more than that as well. So as it sounds like you're well aware that that section of the course can get even some of the most nimble people, and I'm definitely not nimble anymore.
Oh yeah.
But to answer your question, I the first year or so of my running journey, I was like, never trail. I got invited to run the North Face Endurance Challenge. They have a 10K there, and I was like, nope, that's trail. I'm never going to do it. But then I eased my way into it, and I think that's kind of the common theme here is, we don't grow when we're comfortable. So getting out of that comfort zone and trying to like challenge myself, that was, yeah, very difficult. And I showed up to JFK, and I think I've told this story like 10 times now, but it's a testament to Mike Spindler. I showed up to JFK. I ran that 13 miles on the AT in 2017, I want to say, and just had a miserable time. Just falls and just walking more than I was running. And I got to the end of the 13-mile section, and I said, never again. I will never do this race again because it was so difficult. And then I finally got through, finished the race, and I was in the gym picking up your bag as you do. And this guy walked up to me and was like, "Hey, can I talk to you?" and it's Mike Spindler, the race director, and he just starts asking me how did that happen? How did you do that? Like, that's incredible. And as you mentioned at the start of this podcast, he is a advocate of the sport. He is a historian of the sport. He's the biggest champion of running and ultra running. And he just came up to me and just made me feel like a champion that day. And he invited me back the next year and the following years. And, as you mentioned, that's why I've been back almost every year. I missed one, but every year since that day, I met him in the gym because of who he is, because of who the community at JFK is, because of who people I meet on the course like yourself are. And I would just never miss that race. So hope to be back this year, even though I might have an 11-day-old daughter, but trying to figure out something. But yeah, I just can't say enough about the people, not only at JFK, but just in this community as a whole.
Yeah, that would be. I love the story about Mike because that's so Mike. That's who he
Hmm.
is. And you wouldn't know he was the race director, I'm sure, when he came over, because he's not going to be
Hmm.
like, hey, I'm the race, that's not him.
Right, right.
I'm sure he was literally in awe of you being able to make it through the AT. And I'm not a technical trail runner. I don't have access to a lot of technical trails. Most of the trails we have are really just like cinder and the gravel. The bridle path in Central Park would not qualify as a trail, Adam, to anyone or any person. But that's really kind of the only trail running I had done before I showed up down there. But Mike and his team, and it is his team, they're just
Yeah,
amazing
totally.
people. The minute I met any of them, I was just like, I was forever connected to them. I call them my JFK family. And, I've done some shows down there and just met people. And, so many of them have never run an ultra in their life. It's their first ultra, but they're going there, like you said, because of Mike or other people in that community who have kept this race going for so long and just
Hmm.
put so much of their own energy into it. And I mean, they've had some of the greatest pros come through there and rip times, and it's really something else. And like I said, for you to make it through that section, I will never complain about kissing the concrete again. I just had a hard fall last week in Hoboken, man, and I'm just like, are you kidding me, dude? Can we stop falling on the concrete and smashing our knees at my age? I mean, can we just like make it through a run? And
Yeah.
here you are like blowing through the AT and ripping it up on the tow path, like God knows at what speed. So what is your fastest JFK? I just have to know because I know it's got to be a crazy fast time.
Well, yeah, I think around 8:43 or something like that. Which is it's okay, but that AT section definitely slows me down. And I don't know if I passed you on the AT section because I'm mostly getting passed on the AT, but once I hit the towpath, I'm able to make up a little bit of time there. But yeah, it's yeah.
That's amazing. It's an amazing time. And obviously the blessing for us is if we can survive. Mike calls it the toll, the AT toll, and that's a good word for it. It is a toll. You got to pay the blood money or you got to pay with cash or you pay with a few dings here or there. But the aid station people will you'll have fun with them the rest of the day. I just be like, "Hey, look at me. Look what I did." They're like, "Hey, we can clean that up for you." Nah, it's okay. I'm good. Don't worry. That's all right. I'll have some good photos when this thing's over. But
It's
yeah, God bless, right? So, other than JFK, which is 6 times, so I know that's
mhm,
certainly one of your favorites. We
mhm.
can't go through all of your races because this would be a 4-hour show if we did. But if we were going to pick one favorite marathon, one
Mhm,
favorite ultra, and one favorite like Ironman or triathlon, take
mhm.
me through those. Tell me about one of those races in each category. What made them special for you, and just what made them just really an amazing memory for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not kissing up to you, but definitely New York Marathon is tops of the list, and it's for those reasons I mentioned earlier. I had a horrible race there, but because of the crowd support and the community and the people on the streets and the people who were connected to Achilles and just the entire vibe throughout that race was like nothing I've ever experienced anywhere else. And I'm not just saying that because of you. It's like legit. And I've been hoping to get there, but get back there, but just hasn't happened yet. As far as an ultra, I would say when I went to UTMB, that's a very unique experience. I ran the CCC there. Again, another like quote unquote failure of mine because I had an injury coming in and only got about halfway through. But just to be at that level, it was a lot of hard work to get there. So 3 or 4 years of building and maintaining points, and then finally getting in, and then to get to that event where it's the World Series or the Super Bowl of ultra running, just to be around the best in the sport and in the incredible mountain scenes of Chamonix and the surrounding areas was like nothing I've ever experienced or since or before. And then triathlon's a little bit difficult, but I've only done that one Ironman. I did a lot of like sprint triathlon and have raced at the World Championships and various like countries throughout the world. But I think that Ironman kind of sticks out for me for several reasons. I'm a one and done type of Ironman guy, but I was able to go out and like have a pretty good time there based on the training that led into it, which was sprint triathlon training. So it was cool to like check that box off, because every time people hear you're a triathlete, they say, "Oh, have you done an Ironman?" And for like 8 years, I never could say yes. I'm like, nope, never done one. But now I can say I'm officially an Ironman, and people don't care, still don't care. They have no idea what that means. So.
Of course. And
the joke's on me.
It is. It's I say to my girlfriend all the time, and to our non-running friends, our non-ultra friends, or our non-Ironman friends, like, you might as well be talking in Mandarin to somebody who doesn't speak Chinese, because they're just like, what? Oh, you did a marathon at what time? Is that good? How far was that marathon? It's the same as all the other ones. It's like, yeah, you finished an Ironman. Wow, that's cool. Like, yeah, it's insane. 11 hours and 3 minutes. I mean, it's one and done. When you do one that fast, it's totally cool to do a one and done. In the ultra community, that's like another whole community unto itself. And I'm sure you would agree with me there. It isn't just the running community. I really believe like the ultra community is just some other level of amazingness, of friendship, of camaraderie, of just wanting to help your fellow competitors. Sure, everybody's out there trying to run their fastest time, but I've had people double back on a trail that saw me down and been like, "Hey, can I get you something? Do you need some Tylenol, some Advil? Can I get you a bandage?" I'm okay. Just leave me over here to wallow for a little while. I'll be fine. Right. But yeah, I mean, honestly, for all my road running marathons, I got my 83rd coming up in New York City, just like 10 days or so. I've never seen anything like that. Sure, volunteers are great, and it is amazing when they're screaming your name, "Go Achilles," and all, but ultra's like some other like amazing entity. For me, I just think you got to get out to Western States. I mean, I like live stream that thing every year. And I mean, I think that would be amazing. I mean, obviously UTMB, the main one, would be super cool, but I think Western States, man, and you're in with Hoka, man. You should have a way to get a crack at that, right? Or run some sort of a qualifier. I mean, you're certainly fast enough to qualify.
Yeah, it's very ironic that you brought that up. Yeah, I would love to make it out there too. You're right. I have ran 2 qualifiers. But as you know, it's like, with 2 tickets or 2 years worth of qualifying times, like it's impossible to get in. So to my knowledge, there's only been 2 amputees to ever be allowed to run Western States. One finished and one made it to like mile 92 or 93. Both friends of mine, both below knee amputees. There's never been an above knee amputee like myself to qualify, let alone be allowed to run. So I would love to have that opportunity. I think I could represent well there, and maybe one day, but until I get the registration acceptance, then I'm going to keep running qualifiers to hopefully try and get there one day.
Yeah, Tim,
you're right. It's like the other like World Series, right? It's like the American tops 100, top 100 race. So it's like the one everybody wants to go to.
Yeah. And it's probably one of the most runnable ones. I mean, a lot of elevation up and down, but one of the most runnable ones versus technical. Like, I don't know, probably Hard Rock is probably like much more technical, right? Or some of the other big hundreds that are out there that are super challenging. That Courtney Dauwalter has won every single one he's ever been in, and sets course records every single time. But it's amazing, man. You gotta counsel me and pick 100 for me, but one that's not gonna kill me, one that's gonna be like I have a chance to actually finish and doesn't have too many technical sections, because then I have a real good chance of maybe pulling it off.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're pretty fit, so I think you could probably do well at a lot, anything you want to do, really. So I know you're winning your age group out there in big races in New York and 83 marathons now at this point. So I think you're probably well on your way to being able to crush it.
Well, I think it's a bucket list item. Like you had your Ironman one and done. So I think I got to tackle a 100 miler somewhere. I wish Mike would
Yeah.
just make one, add another race to his repertoire. They do have one down there. They do have a 100 miler that runs through a lot of the same section. And I have some friends who've done that. I don't think I think it's kind of boring as far as races
Mhm.
goes, but you just kind of run around in that whole section on the towpath on the C&O. But so what? 100 miles doesn't have to be sexy, as long as you got a
Right.
good crew, right? As long as I got some people
I,
to come out there and keep me awake. Running in the
that's
night,
right.
I don't know about that, man. I don't know,
I'm
dude.
not sure. I'm not sure there's an easy 100, you know.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the case. So we'll go from easy to hard. So
Mhm.
the mantra and theme of the show is stay in the fight. And I've asked every guest who's ever been on their stay in the fight moment, toughest obstacle overcome in race or life. So obviously I have to ask you as well. So what do you think, Adam?
Well, yeah, I think it changes every year. And obviously, like in 2007, that was my probably the biggest challenge I would like to say ever. And that was like, uh, not chosen. It was like, brought on by external forces. But, every year or subsequent year since about 2015, I've tried to really take challenges head on and like have big goals and big opportunities over the past 10 years. And I think each year there are plenty of those like stay in the fight moments where it's like, all right, like, can I do this? Can I get through this? What's going to get me through this? And it's just built up over the past 10 years to reflect back to 2015. I was like, oh, my first half marathon, that was like so hard to get, through mile like 10. And that was like a stay in the fight moment. And then fast forward like a few months later that maybe the next year is like, oh, the marathon is like so hard. And grad school is so hard and I got to like stay in the fight here and having a 2-year old is so hard. So I think like each year is, that challenge to find something bigger and better that's going to help me like challenge me to stay in the fight. And when I'm able to do that, I'm able to just be better on the other side of it and have like even something bigger or have better ability to get through like really big and challenging things, both maybe yes on the athletic side, but in life as well.
Yeah, makes us more resilient and helps us be the best version of ourselves, right? And
Mhm.
it's something that will always keep changing. So, post accident, who do you think has impacted or inspired your journey the most? Because you've certainly inspired a lot of people by what you've done since then. But who do you think inspired or impacted you the most?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, my family was definitely there like day one by my bedside, and that's like been a commonality through childhood to now, and that's probably been the most impactful. There are plenty of other athletes that I can think about. Melissa Stockwell's another one, who was the first female amputee of the war in Iraq, and is someone I followed her journey. We connected, shortly after my hospital stay and injury, but I'd followed her journey and watched her through a computer screen compete at the world championships and do all these things, both in triathlon and running um, and just watch through the computer screen and like, wow, that would be cool if I could do that one day. But I was literally like not doing anything to help myself get there, right? And then finally, 2015, once I started becoming active, I reached out to her and she like got me connected, and through her, I was able to do my first triathlon and then progress to being that person competing at the World Championships, which again, like having someone like that mentor me through that process was incredible. And it's really cool. I was just down in Colorado Springs 2 days ago, and was able to run with her and reconnect. And we've stayed friends throughout this time, but she's just really impacted my journey through doing things, doing that action portion, right, and like leading by example and not and walking the walk that she talks, right. So it's just been incredible to follow her journey and then years later kind of be all those things or be that person that she was for me um, to others.
Outstanding. And what a great way to close it to get to run some miles with her. After how much he shared and how much he meant to you, and for that part. And it definitely leads me in as we're getting towards the end here, community service. I just think in every area of our lives, there's always something more we can do. And you served the country and did it for a long time, and you're still serving in many ways of what you're doing now through your recovery journey and your
Mhm.
inspirational journey as an athlete. What are some things that you like to do in the community service area that you're currently doing, or maybe some things that you're thinking about doing, maybe that are like more down the road, something bigger that you're is up there in that brain of yours right now? I could see the wheels turning like, hey, I want to do something really big to impact others.
Yeah, I think there are a few things, and a lot of it revolves around like military nonprofits or the nonprofits with that serve athletes with disabilities, and I do a lot of work in that area. But I think something in my community that I've really grown to love is working with athletes in my community and I have a master's degree in sport performance psychology. So I work with a couple collegiate teams here, but there are a lot of athletes and college students who can't afford sports psychology services. So able to do pro bono work for these athletes and kind of helping them through, challenges that they may face on or off the field and helping them be the best versions of themselves, both athletically or student or life. And just working with them has been really a joy of mine. And it's something that a way I'm able to give back through, the master's degree that I have and kind of my background in athletics. And it's not like work. It's like such a joy to do.
Yeah, that is a beautiful way to give back and share, that secondary education that you spend so much time on and help others
Yeah.
achieve their best, like you said, whether it's as an athlete or just as being a better person, more confident,
Mhm.
more sure of themselves in life. So God bless that. Um, and before we roll out, how about any message, maybe specifically, or final words of wisdom for the Run Chats audience to share?
Wow, that's a big question. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest message I like to leave people with is they see me like 10 years later, 10 years after I started this journey, right? So they see all the things from the bio that you read at the start of the show and not where I was in 2015 when, I was like walking or walk running like 15-minute miles, and walking more than I was running. And but starting from that point, and if you're persistent and consistent at it, you're able to really change your life over a short amount of time. And the longer you stay with it, and it's been 10 years at this point, it can really add up to big things if that's the life there, if that's the direction you want your life to head. And when I started in 2015, I never would have imagined all the things that you read in my bio, not in a million years. But that's the joy of it, right? It's like keep putting one foot in front of the other, as your mom mentioned. And you never know where life will take you as long as you're moving towards that person who you want to be.
God bless, man. That's a beautiful place to land it, my friend.
Hmm.
Well, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed having you on, getting to spend some
Yeah.
time with you in this conversation. And I look forward to being out there on the trails or the roads with you, even though I'll be eating dust and you'll be like three
Yeah,
hours
right.
finished, and I'll still be out there awaiting a shower and a cold drink after. But this has been so much fun, and thanks for imparting so much of your wisdom and experiences to the Run Chats audience. And we tell everybody at the end of every show to keep lacing them up, to keep getting out the door, and always remember to stay in the fight.
Thanks so much, Ron. Thanks for having me. And yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you in person and have this conversation today. Thank you.
Yeah.